So, back once again. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Andrej Glezl and Mr. Mr. Ivan Brezak-Berkan.
Hi guys. Hello. All of you here, that's good. So we're going to have a talk with Andrej. He's a very well-known founder in Slovakia. So I'm thinking like the best-known Slovakian startup currently, right?
That's tough to say. The reason why we are well-known is thanks to an article that happened to be published in TechCrunch. And I'll talk about it later on, so that's why a lot of people know about us.
So okay, how many of you know about Datamolino? Awesome, so we have a lot of things to discover. So in short, what do you do? What does Datamolino do?
Very simply, Datamolino is a business that assists people to do the following. I'll show you. I just had a beer with Ivan, and do you know what this is? Receipt, exactly. And when you're a consumer, you pay that receipt and you don't care, right? You leave it behind in the bar. But when you're a business and you have to expense for it in your accounting, you have to deliver it to your accountant, right? And the accountant has to get the data out of this receipt into the system, and they account for it. And what Datamolino does is, rather than you collecting these documents, bringing it to your accountant, and not only receipts, but also invoices, bills, you just scan them, take a shot with your smartphone, and deliver it to your Datamolino account. Everything else is taken care of. We do the data entry for you, and your accountant is very happy. So that's the basis of the solution that we have on the table, and that's the basis of the company that we have created a year ago.
Cool. So the latest news from Datamolino is what you've raised around, right?
Yes, we've raised a seed round in February of 500,000 euros. So that was a major stepping stone for us.
Okay, so why freaking accounting? Isn't it boring? Were you an accountant before, or?
And my entire family works in accounting, and it sounds boring, but it's very important. Everyone here is dependent on his account, right? Everybody pays taxes. And since my family was in the business and I saw them spend hours and hours just retyping stuff into their computers, we kept on thinking about it with my brother and a couple of friends, like, how do we help to solve this kind of problem, because they're not studying in order to retype documents, something that has already been produced electronically. Why would you have to retype it? That's manual labor. That doesn't require any education. So that's where we're thinking as to what does have to happen in order for this problem to change.
So not to get into details of Datamolino, although it's a very interesting startup, but you're in a phase now with a project that's probably different from a lot of people that we've heard here at Shift, in the sense that your story is just beginning, right? You've just left an accelerator, you've just raised a round, people will hopefully hear about you more in the future. You're not that well known yet.
That's right.
And at this moment, what are you thinking? Like, what are the problems you're facing? What are the challenges? What are the thoughts going through your head when you agree to come in to Split, not do work on Datamolino?
First of all, I'm really glad that I was invited to come to Split and talk. And then the reason I also explained to Ivan, the reason I like to attend events like this and speak on them is because the element of sharing is very important in my life. There was someone who inspired me to actually take the steps which led me towards founding Datamolino. And if that someone didn't take the time to come in to places like this, I would never probably get inspired. So that's why if there is anyone anywhere in the world who feels like, yes, all I can do is just to show up, maybe talk to a couple people, inspire them, that's, I think, is the best thing you can do. And also when I listened to a lot of the speeches yesterday and also today, you hear it from experienced guys who have done it for years, who have been successful entrepreneurs. I look at it from the perspective right now as a guy who is right at the beginning of the journey. I mean, having raised a round and having built a prototype, having a product that's being tested and about to get launched in the next couple of weeks, is the phase where all the stuff that these guys have been talking about, those good advices, I have to translate them into actual actions. You know, what does that mean that you have to inspire people? What does that mean that you have to get committed people? What does that mean that you have to hire the best talent? How do you do it? How do you stay focused? How do you iterate? How do you know that it's the time that, you know, this idea is just completely wrong? Because you're right there in the moment. You don't have a second chance to do it again, right? And that's the excitement. So that's when we talked about the purpose of why I think it's important for me to come and talk to guys who may be starting their own things and maybe are looking at the very important decision. You know, do I change my life? Do I jump directly into this thing? Am I going to start raising money to fund my project? I wanted to share some of the things that we are going through right now, very difficult decisions, but also very exciting decisions and decisions that we love to take. So I think that's the main point.
So what are the hard decisions? You mentioned hiring.
Yeah.
So hire bright, talented people that have strengths other than your own. What else? What have you been Datamolino's challenges in that area?
I'd say it comes down to really hiring, and by hiring, I want to spend a little more time on hiring, because a lot of people say, you know, surround yourself with the best talent. Now, when you're at the beginning, nobody knows about you. You have an idea, and you haven't done 5 startups before. Now, how do you approach people? How do you approach the best people? How do you get the best talent on board with you? Is there anyone who has an idea? Because I don't. You know, you're an unknown, you come around, you go, and you're like, hey, you guys are working for the guys who pay you tons of money, and we would like to offer you nothing, and why don't you join us? It's exciting. That's the reaction, right? And then again, you know that you can't do it all by yourself. You know that if you don't scale up, if you don't scale the team, you'll end up iterating with the same people. So what do? Do you offer them more money from the very early, you know, very little money that you have early on? No, because if you motivate people with money, that's the worst thing you can do. And we have heard it also yesterday, also today during the presentations. But how do you know that even if you get someone who is maybe sick of the former job that he's doing or she's doing, how do you know that that's the right type of person that fits with your team? Do you have, you know, 3 months to try with everyone? No, because many times your runway with the money that you have at a certain time is maybe 3 to 6 months, maybe 6 months to 1 year. Do you get a second chance to spend the same money? You don't, unless you get very lucky and make a lot of money early on. So when someone tells you that focusing on getting the right people very early on board is not just an interview process that you outsource. It's really spending a lot of time with the guys you are interviewing. And by spending, I mean go out with them, drink with them, spend a week intensely with them, take them out on a cottage, see how they really work intensely, see how they behave outside the job, see what they are made of. Because we've also talked about this with Ivan. Company culture, how do you form company culture? With people. And if people don't subscribe to the way you are built up, you'll never be able to build a company culture, because you will have clashes and you will have to iron out the clashes more than you don't. And those are the things which you do not uncover unless you really live with those people. So if you have a chance and if you want to hire early on, forget about easy interviews. Forget about, you know, half an hour with someone who impresses you with a CV. You have to live with those people. And that's one of the advice. And before you are able to do it, you have to make your own homework. And the thing is, what we have done, you know, we are trying to approach a talented person. We know he or she is a great programmer, or he or she is a great salesperson. We really have to impress the hell out of that person, right? And if we are unable to propose a convincing plan and explain what the hell it is that we are trying to achieve and why someone should come on board, then we have failed in the beginning. And we are nowhere near to actually get a chance to talk to that person. So in order to get that done, it requires a lot from yourself to really be critical as, you know, why would that person be interested to join our team? What is it about us? What is it about the product? Why is it exciting? Why do we live for it? How do we show that this is it? And that requires a lot of time. So when we were also talking with Ivan about, you know, how much time do I spend every single hour of my life right now living with the product. I'm not saying that I only work, but it's the mindset, it's the mentality, it's the lifestyle. You know, that's what it translates into.
You also mentioned beforehand that even later on, there's issues with hiring, with getting people that can be good, as your new CEO is, just ingrained in the company culture. How do you go about that?
Exactly, and definitely the one thing that a lot of talented people who come on board later on, and when you progress and when you raise money, because the fact that we have raised the seed round allowed us to actually go into the market and declare that, guys, this is not just an idea, this is not a bunch of lunatics, there is an investor behind this, somebody who was willing to put money on the table because they believe that this team has the chance to succeed. But we know that in order to succeed, we have to be critical about ourselves. There is a limit to our abilities, and we have just recently hired someone whose abilities to actually develop products is far superior to anything that any of our coders have had in the past. And that specific person brings in a new approach. And how do you go about changing from the old one? The guys have built something, and maybe the new person will have an amazing perspective from the outside world, and this is something that we have bought together with him. He is an outsider. An outsider gives you a critical approach, and that's such a value if you approach it with an open mind, because you don't get that too often. Most of the insiders have a tendency of being not so critical because they're criticizing their own work, but where you take an outsider on board and you are open to embracing his or her opinions on what you are doing, that's extremely valuable. But it's just for a limited period of time, because that person is going to melt in. Now, how do we go about that? A lot of communication. Again, a lot of spending time, really explaining, making sure that we follow the strategy. If we set the strategy, if we know that these are the goals that we want to achieve by the end of 2014, and the goals are set very clearly and very simply, that translates into actionable items for every single month. And those monthly items translate into actionable things for every single week, for which we have to hold each other accountable. And if certain things someone introduces into the company don't work, we have to change them. We have to do something about it, because if we do not meet our long-term plans, then we are never going to be able to succeed. And this requires a lot of understanding, a lot of open mind from everybody who's inside the team to actually be able to accept this kind of a culture, the culture of change.
Well, you mentioned time a lot, and wasting time, especially be it the wrong team or whatever. So you were part of Vita, the accelerator from Telefonica. Why did you decide on joining them? As I understand it, you had experience before, you did a product before. Joining accelerator for a lot of people, especially here, does it bring value? Or will I lose 3 months and not get anything for it, especially if they're local, right? You went to Prague, you didn't go to London or Dublin or the States.
Absolutely. The number one thing when we were considering what to do with at the time it was a concept of Datamolino, was in order for us to give ourselves a chance to build a global solution, we have to surround ourselves with the people who have the ability to actually push us global. And I'll be very honest, it's very difficult to do it from a country like Slovakia. Like no one is looking into Slovakia as the next Silicon Valley. So in order to gain credibility, you have to be very, very humble and make sure that you take the steps that will help you put yourself on the international stage. And we saw the acceleration programs as being one of the ways how you can achieve this without investing too much of your time and too much of your money into trying to promote yourself, because those acceleration programs do it for you. So that was number one thing, was really go through something where there's people critical enough who can give you the first judgment on what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. And they don't really have any hidden interest behind it, because especially the jury that selected us, none of those people had anything to do with Telefonica, and there was no one from Slovakia or the Czech Republic. And they looked at the product and they said, okay, this could be a fit. This could be something that could work on a global scale. Fair enough. So you have the first validation of what at the time was just a concept. And then the second thing is, if you build the concept into an actual product, how are you going to be selling it? Is there anyone who's already thinking about how am I going to be selling the product that I'm building? How am I going to achieve the fact that there are actual consumers who buy the product that I have and are using it? And that's the most difficult aspect. And building relationships with strong partners is the one thing that we have felt from the very beginning is a key ingredient of our success. And if we're unable to build those relationships, then we have failed before we have even started. And joining an acceleration program, you really have to look at the possibilities that the acceleration program gives you in terms of, does it help me at the end of the day to start selling my product? And we saw Wira as a global acceleration program had the ability to do that for us.
And do you think that people expect wrong things from accelerators at some point? We mentioned like you have talks, you have mentors and everything. What were there things that you think people shouldn't focus on that much and focus on other things that would help them in evaluating what accelerators to join?
Great point. If I look at it from hindsight, and if somebody at the beginning of our acceleration would have told me that the most thing you will learn is actually from the guys who are accelerating at the same time as you are, I would say, come on, like that's just doesn't make any sense. But it is just the utmost truth. The people who were part of the acceleration program, the other startups, although they had their own agendas, they were incredibly instrumental in our growth, the ability to actually do something about our product. The mentors, they come and go. Some of them stay because they are so interested in you that maybe some of them become angels, but a lot of the mentors in acceleration programs, they come, they give a good talk, they inspire you, but they go. But those guys in the acceleration program who are staying there and sweating together with you, they stay in. And those kinds of relationships and the stuff that you can actually learn and get inspired by someone else doing something different, that actually is the mindset that you should be looking for in those acceleration programs. So if you are a person who does not hesitate in getting challenged by others and jumping into a pool where there's competition, where there's someone who could be better, join an acceleration program because it gives you a chance to actually better yourself, to get way above the standards that you think that you are able to achieve all by yourself. And I think that's the biggest value of an acceleration program.
So what did Datamolino achieve in Wira specifically?
What Wira gave us was a clear time frame. And we have, for the first time, had the stress of, guys, we have to set clear goals and we have to deliver on the promises. And within our time at Wira, and that was also one of the reasons why the investors actually decided to invest the money in us, they were like, okay, guys, you have set yourself some goals and you were able to keep the promise. And that's the quality that we are looking for in people. And a lot of the guys are, when you were listening to the speeches today, they were telling about, what are the key qualities that people are looking for when they're investing. My experience, very personal, very subjective, was you have to be able to show that you're able to deliver on your promise. If you say that something will be done in a certain month, there better be a good reason if it's not. And there better be very few exceptions when things don't get done rather than they do. And that's why it doesn't start with you not being able to promise. A lot of people are able to promise the world to everyone, right? Making promises is the easiest thing, but making sure that you make the right promises that you are actually able to achieve and that they make sense towards the end result, that's the challenge. And when those guys who were looking at us, at the end of the day, we had 3 investors who were really interested in investing, and we chose one of them. Every single one of those investment funds, what they told us, guys, out of all the companies that are here, what you have demonstrated most is your ability to deliver. And this is what we are looking for in teams. We are looking for people who are able to deliver on their promises. And that's what Wira also helped us.
So you finished the accelerator, you're finishing your product, getting ready to launch, or maybe not yet, but how do you go, and you mentioned the investors, how do you go about finding the investment? As we know in Central Eastern Europe, it's pretty hard. There are not a lot of VC funds. There are some. A lot of them maybe aren't the right fit for most startups because even the investors don't have experience. American investors or British investors, for example, aren't ready to invest in companies that aren't in London or maybe New York, Silicon Valley. How did you go about finding the right investor for your product?
The funny thing is, I tell this to everyone. The first time I met with my investor was before I even had the company. And the reason why I'm telling you this is there are a few miracles when you come up and you pitch your startup on a stage like this and somebody comes to you and saying like, here's the check, I really love what you're doing. Those maybe happen, maybe in fairy tales, and maybe there are some really grand ideas when it does happen. But actual investments happen on the basis of the fact that people get to know you. And they don't get to know you over a week. They don't get to know you over one beer in a bar. They get to know you over a period of time, and they get to know you when they see that what you are telling them is actually true. And from all the investors who actually wound up giving us a term sheet. All of those guys, we spent at least 7 months talking to, sending them presentations, visiting them, having them visit us, and really making sure that we spent quality time with them and that they got to know us. And again, they're busy people. And if they find the time that they want to visit you, you better make sure that you make the time in your schedule and give them the time to get to know you. Otherwise, there's a very limited chance of you getting a good investor on board, because it's not only about them getting to know you, that's one part of the story, but you also have to get to know the investors. Those guys will be watching you closely. Those guys will be giving you challenging questions. Those guys will be actually the critical ones, and thanks God for those who are critical, because if you have a non-critical investor, really beware and run away, because you need to have critical investors who think from a very business-like perspective, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So you have to get to know them, and you have to make sure that you are comfortable in that kind of situation, because it's a relationship afterwards. It doesn't happen that they come and go and you replace them with someone else. They are in there for hopefully a long run, and they can help you a great deal.
So what would be some actionable steps that you would recommend for the long-term relationship with an investor? Is it just like emailing them every couple of weeks? Is it like finding them at a conference?
You gotta go out and you gotta find them. You gotta meet them in person. People react to emails, but imagine you're a venture capital fund and you get 1,000 emails a week.
So why would they talk to you?
Why would they even reply? Right? You have to get there. You have to introduce yourself. Don't be shy. Talk to them. You have 30 seconds, maybe sometimes even 15 seconds to catch their attention, and there are various tricks. I'm not going to talk about these tricks. You have mentors in various acceleration programs who are going to teach you these tricks. But you have to get their attention, and from the moment you have the attention, get the first date. It's like dating, almost. You have to get the first date, and from the first date, you build a relationship onwards. And think about it from a perspective, if I need money in 6 months from now, it may already have been too late to get to know the investor. It may already be, it still can happen, and I might get lucky, but things take a lot of time. So that's why strategically, if you're planning on raising funds, do it the moment you are starting up your business. You have to build relationships with the founders.
So how have you managed to stay focused? Because all the other things that you mentioned are pretty well thought out, like planning out, okay, we'll need an investment later on, we'll need people in certain positions, yep, etc. How do you stay focused? How do you keep your eye on the ball and get through Vira, get the investment? What do you do that these guys can learn from so they can keep on track as well, maybe someday?
The number one thing that helps our company, and this is just our experience, so I'm not saying that this will work for everyone, we have weekly meetings. No matter what happens, and no matter if someone is on a different continent, every Monday, we, as the founders, the 4 guys that we have founded the business together, we sit together, or we devote specific time together to actually account for what has each of us done and what we are planning to do for the next week, and how what we are doing and what we have done actually contributes to achieving our goal. And if our goal is set, by the end of 2014, we want to have 30,000 of recurring revenues for our product, if that's the measurable item of what we are trying to achieve, and if one of the other ones is like, yes, we have to have 300 customers on board, we have to know that these are the steps that are bringing us closer to achieving this goal. And trust me, it is extremely important, because many times you get drawn down into dealing with a lot of stuff, hiring, as I said, legal issues, trying to find customers, trying to sell your product, being at different places, and many times you find yourself in really dealing with the last details of all these problems, and suddenly you realize that, why am I actually spending 5 hours every day on trying to make a new presentation for someone, damn it, I don't even know. Like, I've been doing presentations for the past 2 weeks, and why am I not happy with this one? And I have spent 2 weeks on doing presentations, and it didn't bring anything to the table. So that's why this kind of feedback that we are providing to each other, and really critical stuff, helps us stay focused.
How would you break that point? So you're feeling that you're wasting your time on something. How to break that point? And
many times it's actually the other guys telling me. Because you can't see it. I mean, guys, but this is really important. How? Why? What did you do? Why did you spend 6 hours on it rather than 4? You have it right there. Like, well, because I was trying to do my best, and it was my best effort, and people get very personal. I was like, well, Okay, next time, just spend 3 hours on it maximum, get it done. Try to find some help. Hire this, outsource this. Focus on your main priority. Your main priority is to get 300 customers by the end of the year. Do that. And there's no, as I said, there's no prescription, no drug that you can take and suddenly you happen to have all these managerial skills and achieving all your goals. You have to try what works best for you. For us, this is what I'm sharing, the weekly managing of ourselves and the actual showing of the accounts, you know, what have I done? What am I planning to do? How does that relate to our goal? That has actually helped us to keep in check.
So besides the things that you're doing right, what are the things that are worrying you currently in this stage of the process? So you have an investment. You've made it, right? That's it, right? You've been on TechCrunch. That's it.
Well, yeah, if that was the goal, then we could have already folded the cards and said, well, let's go home or spend a nice holiday in Croatia in the summer. But that's the beginning. You know, we have achieved the investment, and that is a lot of responsibility. You know, how do you invest? You know, the one thing, me being a CEO, I am accountable to the guys who invested the money in us. You know, how are we spending the money well enough? Are we spending too much on certain things, or are we spending too little on certain things? And now, when we talk about actually going to various new markets, actually, a go-to-market strategy is something that when people hear it, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, it's a buzzword. You find distribution channels and you find how the best way to get to your customer. But actually breaking it down into actionable steps and executing every single one of those steps and allocating financial amounts as to what it's going to cost me and how much that specific investment is going to bring back in terms of revenues and in terms of profit over the long run, this kind of planning is difficult. And it takes a lot of time, and it shouldn't take too much time because otherwise all you spend is just, you know, making projects. But you have to have an actionable set based on which you perform, and your performance is measured against something that you have set in terms of your KPIs. And that's the number one challenge that we have right now. I mean, we really have to spend the money wisely. We cannot underinvest, we cannot overinvest, because otherwise we are running the risk of, you know, falling just this little short before we achieve the goal.
So what are the future plans for Datamolino? What's next? It's getting the customers, getting out of beta?
Yeah, there's customers in the beta, and we are converting them now for the Slovak and Czech markets. So hopefully the first revenues are starting to flow this month, and gradually securing that these customers get the service that they have subscribed for. I mean, this is the number one thing. We've spent a lot of time talking to the customers. For a lot of the customers, they're with us.
Everyone says that, like, they spend time with customers. What does that mean to you?
For us, one of the reasons why we have even started building the product was because there were people coming to us saying, you know, guys, I know you are in this QR code business. That's the previous project called BuySquare. But what about the solution that addresses all the paper that is in there, all the PDFs? And from that moment when we had those people coming to us, the potential customers, we spent time with them, literally showing them, okay, you know, if the product looked like this, you can call it even focus groups, would you use it? What would be the features? If it looked differently, you know, first sketches, and you can do it on pop. You don't really have to. You can even draw it on a piece of paper. Go out into the, you know, supermarket, whatever. You find your user group, your target group, and show them what you're trying to propose. Really, literally talking to them, and this is what it means. You can't just send out emails and hope for some people to come back and return. There's a, you know,
what do you do then? So a lot of startups, again, across the region, say they're talking to customers, they're building their products, but they don't. What should they do?
They should get their asses off the table or the chair and really walk towards getting the people who are the ultimate buyers of the product. And really ask, literally, would you buy that? Would you pay for this? Would this kind of a service, if I had it ready in 2 or 3 months, would you actually buy it? Would you put money on the table right now for me to actually get the product down to you?
And what if they say no?
And if they say no, then they know that they have either a problem in terms of their presentation, they have addressed the wrong type of a user, the wrong type of decision maker, and they have to evaluate it. But that's the feedback you need to get before you even spend a single euro on actual development.
And basically, okay, accounting, again,
yeah,
very exciting job. But I guess that some users might be excited about having the startups in the space, right? Getting some innovation done, getting an interesting product. Do all of them react in a positive way?
Not at all. The thing is, like you will find with a lot of different user groups, you have innovators, you have people who get excited by technology, and those are the few, let's say up to maybe 10 to 15%. Then you have some people who are keen to use new technology, maybe the next 15 to 20%, and then you have the rest of the market, towards which that group of the market is very conservative, very much likes the way things are running, and if you're starting to talk to those guys, then you will get discouraged very quickly. Those guys will tell you, this will never work. But at the end of the day, if a lot of the people who are the fan base, the guys who like new technology, if they start using it, and if they see this is the cool thing, and if the other ones, the conservative ones, see that this actually helps, then they start using it. So that's why when you are building your focus groups in the beginning, you have to be very careful as to who you include in there, because otherwise
is it just a matter of having a broad enough user base, or
definitely you have to talk to a lot of different types of users potentially, and be aware of it, and don't only talk to the fans, because if you only talk to the fans, you'll never address the problems, and at the end of the day your product will never be able to succeed with the
so how many
customers.
people did you talk to? How many, like
literally
10, 20, 30?
I've talked to over 100 people in the from July to the end of December last year. Literally talk, one-on-one interviews. And I didn't get discouraged. I had 3 meetings a day sometime, and that's what it takes. And some of them came because they wanted to, and some of them agreed to a meeting, and some of them I just, I went to conferences, and that's how I approached them. It takes a lot of rejection, and it takes a lot of people saying, you're crazy, this will never work, there is a new technology for that, forget it, and that kind of stuff. And if you get discouraged over that, then of course you can just fold the cards.
How do you get motivated? Okay, if there is one bad day and 3 people say,
this is crazy,
like, this doesn't work,
yeah.
What do you say to yourself?
You thrive on the positive feedback that you get, and you have to be also critical in terms of how do you evaluate it. Because if you know that you have received negative feedback, that is a learning experience. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person. And there might be a lot of truth in that, because a lot of people say, I would never use it the way you have proposed it. They're not saying that the product itself does not solve the problem. And if the product solves the problem, but it solves it in a different way, then listen to what the customer is telling you. I am looking for a different way how to use it. Can you deliver? And that's the feedback that we got. And that's how we have also iterated the product itself. I mean, we have not been sitting there, and also you don't iterate based on the feedback of one person. That's also very dangerous. So you have to accumulate enough sources to actually give you a statistically relevant information as to, okay, n number of people have actually requested that the product works this way. So let's invest our effort into actually delivering on that feature.
So hearing all of this and thinking about what did Andrej, like 3 years ago, watching this guy on stage talking about his startup think, I think one question would be, what keeps you personally motivated? Because again, some startups are sexy and interesting. This is accounting, it's data, it's kind of interesting, but right? But what keeps you personally motivated to strive on? To come to Split, talk about a startup, but then again go tomorrow morning back and like work next week and...
Yeah, I also worked today in the morning, so it's no difference whether I'm in Split or whether I'm somewhere else. What motivates me, I'm an achiever. That's the DNA that I have. Whether it's sports, whether it's whatever I've done in my past, I like to achieve results. And what motivates me with Datamolino is that it actually is a product which helps. And that's also, if I refer to Semyon, what he said, helping at the end of the day is much more of a gratification than earning the money back on it. I mean, you don't do it for free. But the help element, the sparkles in the eyes, you're like, guys, this is really great. This is great stuff. That's what motivates me. And we have seen a lot of sparkles with a lot of people so far.
Is everyone on the team motivated in the same way to work on the project?
There are various people, and everybody has a different motivation scheme. And you have to also, being a CEO, you have to understand what motivates others in your team. I know that I'm an achiever and I like ticking boxes, but I know that there are some people in my team who hate ticking boxes. How do I communicate with those guys? Do I apply my system of values on them? Or do I make sure that they can achieve and they can actually help me tick off my boxes if I don't push them into ticking theirs? And as I said, understanding your team, #1 priority of a CEO. Having enough empathy in order to actually understand what their main pressure point is, #1 thing. Only from that you can build on towards actually solving a real problem and helping your customers getting the product done.
What would be points 2 and 3?
What is that?
What would be points 2 and 3 then? If the first one is the team in this specific manner, what would be the 2 more things that you think people might not expect to be useful for a growing startup to keep their mind on?
I'd stick with the people. It's just bottom line, and whether it's the customer or whether it's your employee or whether it's your partner, it's a people's business. Don't get fooled by technology, because you may also within our company we have the motto saying like we happen to a business which is based on the fact that we are trying to help others through technology. Technology is just a medium. It's not the end result. We are not building a company because we are building the technology. Technology is just one way how we want to help the customers. If there was another way, if it was, I don't know, by personal visiting them and it actually turned into a nice business model, we'd probably do it. But technology is one of the, right now, it seems to be the best way how we can actually help them.
Very nice point to finish on, but we do have time for questions. So,
financials, when you first said, okay, this is my concept and I'm going to start with this, or have you had any money spared for that? And third one is, let's say I'm having a concept, what is my next step to come to the position where you are right now?
Okay, so maybe just I repeat the first question was whether at the beginning when we applied to the accelerator what we had in hand, whether we had a presentation or a concept, just so that people can hear it. Okay, to answer it, yes, that was exactly what we had. We had a concept and we did our homework on the market potential. So what we were proposing to the guys who were evaluating in the acceleration program, saying, guys, this is the opportunity, this is the problem on the market, and this is the existing solutions which are there, and this is how our solution that we have built just a few mock-ups as to how that should be working. This is how it addresses the problem on the market, and this is how we're going to make money. This is the team behind that, and this is the reason why this team is going to stick together throughout the acceleration and going to deliver on what we are promising you to actually will happen. This was it. And for a lot of accelerators, this is enough. Because they are, for a lot of them, many times, if you are too far advanced and let's say too deep in your grave, digging and digging and digging and being completely persuaded by the fact that this is the right way to dig, and one day you are just too deep in the grave and nobody has the power to actually get you out of there, it's just too late. So, and they also said this is what they liked. They liked the fact that we had a business together. The team has been a proven achieving team, and that we didn't apply too late. That was one thing that they told us. Then the second question was
about money.
About money. About how to get money.
No, when you first said, okay, I'm going to do this, have you had any money in your pocket? Have you invested? Do you need, how much money did you need to start the whole process?
Yeah, all the founders, we have put together 100,000 euros from our own money. That was also, I mean, I'm not saying that that's the money that you need. I'm telling you our story. And that was also one of the signs for the others, also for the acceleration program, saying like these guys are putting their money into the game. So they mean it. They are taking some risk. And that's also one of the help. It is very helpful in my perspective to also to put you in the mindset of saying like, if this really falls, I'm going to lose my own. I'm not saying that failure is a bad, failure is a great thing, because it's a great thing when you learn from it. And we have failed so many times. That's why we are here. If I didn't fail, I wouldn't never be here, right? And that's the mindset. So I think it's it's a different perspective when you go into the game when you invest your own money rather than when you only use other people's money. And it helps you to actually be very conscious of the decisions that you take and also of the consequences of what might happen if I screw up. And the third one was?
Third one is, let's say I'm having a concept. What is my next step to come to the position where you are right now?
Start talking to people. When you have a concept, run the concept with the most people you can possibly run the concept with. Don't be afraid that people will steal your ideas. That's one of the things that I keep on hearing. People are afraid that if I tell somebody about this wonderful idea that I have, they're gonna steal it. You know, I've heard the most wonderful story when I was in Silicon Valley 2 years ago from a guy who has done a lot of things, and they're like, ideas are worth nothing. And there was some guy in the audience like, no, but I have a great idea. Yes, and it is worth nothing. Businesses are worth money. Turning ideas into businesses is the skill of an entrepreneur. If you have that skill, you don't have to be worried about sharing the idea, because only if you have that skill of sharing and being able to accept that there might be something wrong with your idea and the way how you develop from the idea into a business, that's when you become an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you just keep your idea to yourself and it will eventually die with you. But otherwise, things don't happen, and especially in the startup world, people should share because there's a lot of people who have something positive to tell you. And a lot of the things that happen in the startup world is people come in there with a very positive attitude. That's what we have also learned. People care. People want you to succeed because a lot of the people thrive on the fact that you have succeeded and they have been part of it. They have seen what you are doing well. And people want to help you with their really, really utmost deep intentions. And that at least has been my experience. So I would definitely share, run the idea by a lot of people. If there are acceleration programs which are open, submit your proposal to it. Every time you do the work on it, if you write down your proposals, you have to think about it, what it is that you are doing. You answer the questions which are critical, and that also helps you understand your approach, your attitude towards how you are doing it and how you're running it. So I would definitely recommend that you apply.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any more questions? Yeah?
Hi, I have one question which is related about your experience in Accelerator. If I understood you correctly, you said that you were been in an Accelerator in Prague for some 8 months or something.
Yes.
In which you have to deliver certain, let's say, level of the completion of the product. So my question is, how was this, your time in Accelerator being structured from these organizers' point of view? I mean, what were your benefits being in Accelerator besides having the money from them? I mean, learning and networking, how that part was structured from their side.
The acceleration program, what they brought was a plan of various lectures from which a lot of people who felt that they have a need, I don't know, addressing presentation skills, addressing business development skills, addressing, I don't know, business planning, whatever type of pain they had, they knew that there was a program at which they could address it. And if they were searching for specific help, the acceleration program could actually help them find the right person to help them with. That was the number one thing, and we have used a lot of this kind of help with especially marketing and especially the product development from the perspective of consumers, consumer first, how to develop the product into a consumer-friendly thing. So that was one of the things. What else we have used was connections and really going for it. The fact that you join an acceleration program doesn't mean that people start opening doors for you. You have to knock on those doors. But what I got was warm calls and introductions. And if I was demanding enough, especially of the people who have visited, a lot of investors who come on board and they like to be friends with you because eventually you might be the next big thing and they might want to invest in you, they have a tendency of making warm introductions. But you have to go for it and you have to really make those phone calls and get to see those people who are very important to you, and especially if the guys make the effort, if the investors make the effort of making those warm calls for you, the worst thing that can happen is that you fail on actually showing up. And we have spent a lot of time actually building these types of relationships. And I think without the acceleration program, it would have been much more difficult, because being part of the acceleration program, it was like a signal to everybody, like, these guys are now investable. These guys mean business because they have decided to change their life, move from one place to another, and they're right now in a phase where they really try to get the product done. So it was like a credential on our shoulders every time we met with someone. It's like, okay, well, these guys are under the review of someone bigger, someone who is a big corporation as such, and there's a credibility element to them. And this is, I think, in my opinion, this is much more difficult to achieve if you're a standalone company without any such help.
Great. And just one small question. So this program was structured in a way that you were pulling certain, let's say, seminars or some what you need actually. So it was not like a scheduled program, but you were pulling what you need out of the portfolio of these courses or whatever.
I think it comes down to the communication that you have with the program organizers. For a lot of people, the one trap that you may fall into is that you're saying like, yeah, I don't need that. And there are certain obvious things. I was trained as a lawyer and I practiced law before. So when there was a course on legal skills, I knew that I didn't have to attend that, right? But that's not the most fundamental element in building a business. That's just an assistance that a lot of people need because it's a costly thing to get. But when there was something about product development, even though we believed strongly that we had the mentors on our side and we had a very strong team, we attended it. Because there was always something new and unexpected that every time we attended that kind of a program, we brought something out of it. And even though initially we were like, okay, come on, this is another waste of time, with hindsight, there was always something else and something inspirational that we got out of it. So I think it was worth it.
Thank you.
Cool. If anyone has more questions for Andrej, he'll be here, right, tonight as well?
Tonight as well, yes.
Awesome. So
leaving
find him
tomorrow.
Afterwards, thank you very much. Please, a big applause for Andrej for visiting us from Slovakia.
Thank you very much. Thank you.